Good morning, good day, good evening from Oz, and I'm surrounded by cicadas again, but they're going to sound like a little lovely bell sort of sound in the video. So my thoughts today are about where we put our attention. That's where our energy is going. And if we're giving too much attention to a particular person or thing or event or situation, then it can create tension, okay? So the simplest one that we can all relate to is in relationships. In our closest relationships, it can build up a lot of tension, particularly when the other person, whether it's your child, your spouse or whatever, a friend, it doesn't really matter. But when you've got lots of attention going into them, it can build up tension within yourself. So, I can look back on the most negative relationships I've been in, participated in, because, I don't want to put it all on the other person, where it all went wrong, because I kept it alive too, But yeah, I used to have a pattern of being involved with narcissists, and a narcissist wants all the attention on themselves. Okay, they're sort of like this big, look at me, if you do something, then it's about them because it affects them, and everything is constantly coming back to them. And I just remember, reflecting back on those times when I was in those relationships, that it drew so much of my attention that I had nothing left for myself. There was no space for me, and I'd always get to the end of each relationship and finally make that break free, and within a few days I would feel my light coming back, and I'd begin to feel like, oh, this is me, this is who I am, and it became a much easier experience to let, to break ties with the other person. But it wasn't an overnight job, it took a lot, because my mind had been trained into this loop of, just having my attention going out, and it created tension in my being. Okay, so and then you can just look at general relationships, with parents, with your children, with your friends. When you're around them a lot, your attention is going in on them a lot. And if there's kind of like even if there's not that much of a friction in the connection, it still can build a lot of tension, depending on what separate cells you've got going on, like what layers of psychology you're viewing all of this through. That's why I find that it's really important to stay connected with people. As much as, I could quite easily have become a hermit several years ago. I just went into solitude and just loved the experience so much. And I could quite easily have kept doing it. But, the flow, the energy, it pushed me back out. And I heard the message loud and clear. Like, it was kind of like, you've got to be with people. And I knew that was, there was a dual layer for that. One layer was so that, I'm bringing my light out into the world and touching people with my heart and my love that flows through me and my presence. And also to be in relationship with people, to be triggered, to let the issues come up, to see the traumas, to see the woundings, to see the psychological patterns, to see the separate cells and let it die bit by bit. And this is a constant flow. There is no end to this. There is, there is this belief that, there's some ultimate point with this. And I don't believe there's an end point. It's just a constant movement onwards and upwards. Because if there was an end point, then I know it'd be pretty boring. Like, once you get to sort of, this incredible level, then you can't move on. I mean, well, where's the fun in that? Like, I always want to keep becoming more. I always want to keep transcending myself. And I just sort of wanted to bring it also to, not just personal relationships about where our attention goes, but where we put our attention in the wider world, okay? So you look out on the world stage at the dramas that are being played out, and we've got a few narcissists up and playing big roles, where it's kind of like this big look at me sort of thing. We have in the United States, what I'd describe as a very attention-seeking president, and a lot of people are putting their attention on this person. It's creating tension. It is. Even the people who are pro, it doesn't matter. Like, it's creating tension. There is conflict in the Middle East. There is conflict and issues in Russia and Ukraine. And if the attention is going there, too much attention, then it's creating tension in our beings. And I'm seeing a lot of people, anyone who is, particularly focused on a particular issue, a particular big world issue, you can see they're getting really chewed up by what's going on, because it's creating a lot of tension in people. And I think that's why it's important to sort of really step back and just accept a lot of stuff, because a lot of bad stuff is happening. A lot of awful situations are happening. And if we keep putting our attention out there on all of that, we will overload, When I was teaching children with emotional and behavioural disabilities, mental health issues many years ago, all of my attention was focused on these children and working on helping them, but it created so much tension in my being. Plus, there was a few other things that were creating a lot of tension, but that I had to shut down my energy system. It just shut down. I couldn't maintain myself. I energetically could not maintain myself. But as far as working with the children, I felt this such a responsibility that it was up to me to save them. It was up to me to help them like no one else could do it. And most people failed at being able to help them. But, there came a point where I realized I've got to let go of that and just let it go. I can't take responsibility for everything that's, going on in the world. And I realize, even one person, we can have an impact, but we can't physically fix it for everyone. And that's in our personal relationships. It's in things that are going on in the world. It is in any particular situation at all. We cannot fix it for everybody else. So that's all I wanted to speak about in this particular video, that where our attention goes, if it's overloading, if we're putting too much attention on a person or an event, or some sort of world issue, then it's creating tension in our beings. And tension in our beings means our chakras are closing up, our heart is closing up, and that flow of light can't get through. Our job is to flow with light. So I think if you want to be a part of this flow, because I really feel like we're being called to rise to a higher level now. Spiritual people, enough dilly-dallying. It's time for us to do what we're created for, which is to bring the light through onto this earth, and it will spin off the fallen ones. They won't be able to sustain themselves the higher we vibrate. So if our attention's always looking back on them and what they're kind of like, look at me, look at my drama, look what's happening, I'm creating war and there's conflict and it's all about me. And the more we're looking at all of that, then we're not doing what we need to do. What we need to do is just open up, let that light flow, forget about it. We can still do things and help the world, that's fine. But there is more we can do by just letting ourselves energetically be clear. Release that tension and just allow that light to flow. It's the heart. That's where it flows through. You know, all the chakras are very important, but it is heart is our center. So let that love flow through. Okay, we're done.